Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Amin Dylan, and in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing my experience as a first-time real estate investor. Unfortunately, my first experience didn't go as planned. I ended up making some major mistakes that cost me extra time, cost me a lot of stress, and really unfortunately, cost me a lot of extra money. In fact, I ended up losing thousands of dollars due to these mistakes. Fortunately, these are all mistakes that are avoidable as long as you know to look out for them. Please make sure to watch this entire video from start to finish. Actually, go grab yourself a pad of paper and a pen, and I actually really want you to do this. I want you to write down the mistakes that I made because, like I said, these are actually mistakes that could have been avoided. There are things that sometimes you don't expect when it comes to real estate deals. This video features none of them. These are things that just as a first-time investor, I guess I just wasn't knowledgeable enough, or maybe I was naive and I ended up not paying attention to these things, and it ended up being actually a bigger headache for me at the end when I closed on that investment. So I don't want the same thing to happen to you. So grab that pad of paper, grab that pen, and let's begin. So here are some of the biggest mistakes I made when it came to real estate investing. So these mistakes that I made that I'm going to be talking about in this video pertain to my experience investing in condos, primarily pre-construction condos. However, some of the things that I'm going to outline, these are things that you should look out for if you're purchasing another type of real estate investment like a house. So first of all, imagine you are about to buy your first investment condo, right? It's very exciting. It's pre-construction. You know, there's probably going to be a big launch. The builder's going to make it seem so like glamorous, and that's going to be the greatest project ever, and you're going to be a millionaire. Basically, every condo project that comes around always has the same sort of tune. They always try to make it so exciting, and they always put this sort of like intense pressure on you to sign on opening day, and get in there and get your condo, and don't pay attention to anything else because for sure you're going to make money. So let's actually get into the things that I want you to look out for and avoid making these mistakes. First of all, let's imagine you are at the launch event of a pre-construction condo. You've got the builder there, you've picked out the unit you want, the price it is, and you're about to sign the paperwork. Before you sign on the dotted line, these are the things I want you to look out for. First of all, I want you to look out for the development charges and levies. So what are those? I actually went onto a government website so I could get the definition. So this is what it says. Development levies are government charges, aka tax, that can be charged to the development of a condo as a closing cost. The levies are used to fund growth-related capital costs such as childcare, fire facilities, shelters and housing, police, emergency medical services, roads. I want you to think of that new condo tower that you're interested in investing in. So government levies and charges are basically what the government has to incur for costs in order to support the building of that new condo. So I'm talking about like roads. So these are the costs that the government's incurring, and they're not just going to pay it out of their pocket. They're going to now charge that as tax to the builder, who is then going to pass on those charges to you. Now, if you're not careful and you don't pay attention to this line in your agreement, you could actually end up having a very nasty surprise when you go to close your condo, because you're going to get a list of closing costs that are going to be given to you. And one of those closing costs are going to be your development charges and levies. So what you want to do, and this is the mistake that you want to avoid making, is make sure that they're capped. So look in the purchase agreement, make sure there's a cap on there, and make sure it's not anything unreasonable. Most of the time I see these capped at about $5,000, which is kind of the norm. But I know from now being an investor and speaking to agents and other investors, these charges can be thousands of dollars. So imagine the government is charging your builder $25,000 as a development charge and levy. So that's $25,000 the builder has to pay as a tax. And if you don't have a cap in place, do you think the builder's just going to pay it themselves? No. They're going to pass it on to you. So that means when you go to close your condo, that's an extra $25,000 that you're going to have to pay out of your own pocket. But if you make sure to look for this in your agreement and make sure there's a cap in place, you will know what your cap is. So for example, like I was mentioning before, let's say it's $5,000. So let's say if the builder has a development charge and levy of $25,000, well, guess what? In your agreement, you've only agreed to pay $5,000. So that means no matter what, you're going to be on the hook for $5,000, and that $20,000 that's remaining, that's going to be paid by the builder. Next up, I want you to pay attention to the part in the contract that talks about occupancy. So basically what happens is, as a condo building's being made, there'll be floors that get finished, right? So usually the bottom floors, right? The first, the second, third, fourth, and so forth, those floors get done first. And then the condo building continues building until the very top level. So let's say it's a 30-story building that you're investing in. So basically, as soon as the first floor is done, do you think the builder's just gonna let it sit there? No, they're gonna actually want to start making more money. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna actually give you the permission to occupy that unit. Now, I wanna make sure you understand this. Occupancy is not that you have now ownership of that unit, right? Occupancy is literally the builder's giving you permission to occupy that unit. So it's really important to know what your occupancy date is. Now, typically when you first sign your contract, there's gonna be a tentative occupancy date, which is like a ballpark, right? And then closer to, the builder will get in touch with you, usually through an official letter, and these days also with an email, letting you know what the kind of final occupancy date is. Typically, they're very close to each other, so unless there's delays, which is a whole other thing and a whole another video I'll talk about. If there's delays in what occupancy date they've given you, you can actually get money from them for not actually living up to what they said and actually being delayed. So that's a whole other video I'll talk about. Let me know if you want more details on that. But getting back to sort of the occupancy that we're talking about, so for example, let's say when you signed your contract, the occupancy was November 1st. Maybe in September you get a letter from the builder saying, yeah, November 1st is your occupancy. There'll be a PDI, which, you get to go and inspect the unit. And if there's any sort of things that don't live up to your standards, let's say there's dings or, something is cracked, obviously there's that opportunity to get the builder to fix it. But why this is such an important line to pay attention to is because it helps you plan. You actually are on the hook financially. So there's a thing called occupancy fee. This is a fee that the builder charges you once you occupy the unit, regardless if you're in the unit or not. The builder doesn't care if the unit's sitting there empty or if you're living in it or if you rented it out. All they care about is covering the costs that they have for having that unit there. So, like I said, it's electricity, it's just the upkeep of the unit. I find in my experience, they're usually equivalent to what you'd be paying in maintenance fees, like maybe $300, $400 for a condo, right? Depending on what size it is. The kicker here is you're gonna be charged that fee no matter what. I like to call these occupancy fees kind of like a phantom mortgage. So this means that money is now being put towards your purchase price. You don't get a discount or anything, and it's not being put towards your mortgage. Remember, your mortgage doesn't kick in until you actually close on the condo. And what I mean by closing is you have your name on the deed and the building is done, so you can actually get a mortgage to be registered onto that property. This is that in between time when the condo building is still under construction. They still have parts of it they're trying to finish up, but your unit is done. Your floor is done. So it's safe for you to now be in that unit to enter the building. So that's why it's important for you to know what your occupancy date is, because like I mentioned before, it's about planning. It's for you to understand when you're going to be paying that extra money to the builder. Now, another part you want to check in the agreement that relates to this is the permission to lease during occupancy. So which I think typically is called the right to lease during occupancy. This is a really important section to look at, especially if you're an investor. If you are going to be living in that unit, then this part really doesn't matter to you, because as soon as you get occupancy, you can move in. However, as an investor, most likely you're going to try to rent out that unit. And if the builder does not give you permission to lease it during occupancy, that means you won't be able to rent it out, which basically means you're on the hook for hundreds of dollars at least per month, and it could be a few months, it could be 9 months, who knows. So make sure if you are investing in a condo, so meaning you plan to rent it out, that in the clause in the agreement you have a right to lease. So what happens if you don't have that clause in there? Well, this is where the situation kind of gets murky. Builders, some of them can be really easy to work with, some of them not so much. Some builders, if you ask them permission, will be pretty cool with it and give you permission. Other builders, especially right now where the market has been crazy and builders seem to think that they can get away with anything, they're less likely to work with you on anything that isn't stated in the original purchase agreement. So that means you can go ask the builder permission and they could say no. Why? Well, it really doesn't affect them, right? It doesn't matter matter if you're moving in or if you have a tenant in there. But at the end of the day, because technically you don't own that unit, you have to follow the rules of the builder. So avoid being in a situation where after you purchase the condo that you have to reach out to the builder to get permission for something that is not stated in the original contract, because you're basically at the mercy of the builder. Which leads me to my next section. Whenever you're investing in a condo, especially for the first time, please do your research into that builder. Make sure you're choosing to work with a builder that has a long history of building really great buildings. Make sure you do your research on them. Were they completed on time? Were there any issues with that building afterwards? What is the reputation of that builder? If you have the option to invest with a builder, let's say this is their very first project, maybe they've had some past issues with condo buildings, those are red flags. There's actually been situations here in Toronto where people have invested with these builders that weren't established. They gave their deposit and later on the builder ended up not being able to actually build. They went bankrupt. So then it was a huge legal case where these investors had their deposits tied up with this builder and they had to take them to court to get their money back. Not only is it just getting your money back, but think of that lost investment. So typically condo buildings take 3 years, maybe 4 years to be completed. So by the time you put your deposit down there and you suddenly realize that that building's not going to be made, sure, you can get your money back, but now the cost of trying to buy that same unit at that time, the costs have gone up. So let's say you had bought that, condo for $500,000 3 years ago, and then the project just falls apart and you get your money back. Well, imagine trying to buy that same condo now 3 years later. Prices have probably gone up, and now what cost maybe like $500,000 might now cost you like $600,000. You've now lost on that ability to have gotten into the market earlier at a better price. One of the things I really recommend before you start investing with any builder is also check with your network. Ask your friends and family, the ones that are investing, ones that have maybe bought condos for themselves. Find out who their builder was and find out what their experience was like. Trust me, people will literally tell you everything that was good and bad about it. I know I do. Also, befriend some real estate agents. So real estate agents are a great source of information. I'm sure in your friends and family circle, you know at least one real estate agent, so become friends with them. Let them know you're interested in investing. Find out what their thoughts are about different projects, about different builders, and a lot of them have experiences working with these different builders. So they're gonna let you know in their experience which ones are the good builders and which ones are difficult. The next thing I want you to look out for is who you hire as your real estate agent. Not every real estate agent is going to be the same. Now, I don't want to get hate from any real estate agents, but this is just a tale of caution when it comes to your money. I want you to actually really remember what I'm about to tell you. No one is going to care about your money more than you. In my experience, it doesn't matter if you're working with a bank, a financial advisor, or if you're dealing with a real estate agent. At the end of the day, if they are giving you advice, I want you to make sure you question it. Now, a good real estate agent doesn't get bothered by this because they do this full time. They're good at it. So they've got commissions coming in wherever. They care more about establishing a relationship with you. So meaning that they're not looking to make a quick buck, that the first place that you see, they're not going to force you to buy. They're actually going to really try to understand what your needs are, what you're trying to do, what your goals are. And they're going to actually only show you places that meet those goals. And especially when it comes to real estate investing, I only work with real estate agents that are investors themselves. I have gone through numerous real estate agents because I feel like finding the right real estate agent is like finding a significant other. This is going to be one of the biggest financial decisions you ever make. And especially if you are new to real estate, if you're still learning, you want to have somebody there that you can trust. What that agent basically should be wanting to do with you is to be your agent for life, meaning that, if right now there's nothing that's available for you that meets your needs, they're not going to push you towards it. They're actually willing to invest long term and wait till there's actually projects that actually fit your needs and then recommend those. It could maybe mean that they have to wait a little bit longer to actually sell a unit to you. It could mean that maybe the commission isn't high because maybe it's a different price. Whatever it is, like they are actually looking out for your best interests. So again, I'm going to say this, I love myself some real estate agents. There's a lot of great ones out there. Definitely they have knowledge, so make sure to learn from them and definitely work with one. But always remember that when it comes to anybody handling your money, you should be comfortable saying yes to those decisions. Don't blindly say yes to something that you do not understand. Another thing you should look out for, which is very, very important, are the clause about assignments. So an assignment is basically where the builder gives you permission to sell that unit to someone else, but technically you don't own it. So remember, you don't own that unit until you actually close on it, and then the deed is in your name. Before that, you've essentially just signed for a piece of paper that states that eventually this is what you're going to own. So there's a lot of rules that you got to follow until you actually own it. So an assignment is really important because there's a number of things to consider. First off, with condo buildings, it can take years before they're done. So, at the time when you purchase it, maybe you had a certain intention. Fast forward, let's say, a year, 2 years down the road, and your circumstances have changed. Maybe now you were planning on moving into it and you've lost your job or you've changed your job. So now you have to move to a different area, maybe a different city. Let's say you got married. So now you went from living alone to now having a partner. So you might need maybe a home or a bigger space. Or let's say you're having a baby, right? Now all of a sudden, that changes things too, where maybe you now want a house with a backyard, right? Whatever your circumstances are, you might be in a situation where you can't close on that condo. You need to get out of it. So an assignment is really important because this is basically your way to get out of your contract. So how an assignment works is you cannot list that condo on MLS or any sort of official realtor platforms. What you can do is privately find a buyer. So you can do that through your social networks. You can post it on Facebook. You can post it on Kijiji. You could, work with an agent that has a lot of people in their network so they can, reach out to the clients they know that would be interested in buying an assignment. So you privately find a buyer. They assume the responsibility in the agreement, and most likely you'll even make some money. So the thing is, not every builder is going to give you permission to assign. So it's very important you look in the contract under the section about assignments and really understand what the rules are. So what you want to look for is the right to assign. Make sure that clause is in your agreement. And also you want to pay attention to the assignment fees. Now, the ideal scenario is that there's a zero assignment fee, meaning you don't have to pay the builder any extra money, but most of the time you have to pay the administration costs, which I think is very reasonable because at the end of the day, when you sell your assignment, there has to be legal paperwork done. You have to get a lawyer involved, and that means the builder has to get their lawyer involved, right? They got to sign off on the new agreement with the new owner. So obviously to pay their lawyer makes sense, right? Why should the builder have to incur extra costs because all of a sudden you changed your mind and you wanted to get out of that contract? So just budget for, let's say, $1,000 for their lawyer fees, right? I think it's quite reasonable. What you want to avoid is an assignment fee. I've actually seen this where the builder will state that an assignment fee can be $20,000, sometimes even more. That means you have to pay the builder $20,000 if you decide to sell your condo as an assignment. Why would you want to pay the builder extra money? So that's why make sure before signing your contract that there is a right to assign clause in the agreement, and make sure that you know what the assignment fee is. Ideally, it should be $0, just administrative costs. Now I want you to pay attention to your floor plan. So it's really interesting to me that you're putting down all this money, especially here in Toronto. You're putting down thousands of dollars for a piece of paper that has a drawing on it. And technically, you don't know what that condo is going to actually be like once you occupy it. So you're sold sort of this image of, the view and, what the colors will be like and sort of the floor plan, but you don't actually know what it will feel like to be in it until you're in it. So make sure you first know what the square footage is and make sure you get specifics. Some builders, what they will do is they'll say, okay, this unit is 500 square feet. But when you actually get possession of it and if you were to actually measure it, you realize they were including the balcony. So obviously this is a big no-no, but it can happen. So it's very important when you're getting the square footage to ask what is the square footage inside the unit and also if it's including the balcony or not. Second, you want to check out the dimensions of each room. So again, if you look on the floor plan, they can have like a drawing. It will show you kind of where the kitchen is, the bathroom, the bedroom. They might even put some furniture in there to kind of show you kind of what it would look like with furniture. But again, this is just a rendering. It's not, and if you read their fine print, it doesn't state that it will be exactly like the rendering. So technically, they might make it look way way better and way bigger than it actually ends up being. But if you have the dimensions, you can actually then figure out quickly, especially as you get more experience, how big that room should be. This is important because as an investor, you should always be thinking as your tenant. So at the end of the day, think about why somebody would want to rent your unit. And if you're thinking of selling it, think about why a buyer would want to buy your unit. What are some things that make your unit more desirable? So obviously bedrooms, that's really important, especially if it's a 1-bedroom. You want to make sure you're not buying something where the bedroom ends up being big enough to just fit a bed. No one is actually going to like that if they don't have space in their bedroom, right? Bedrooms are really important. Things like closet space. I remember when I was looking at units that were done, some of them had such small closets and it was a real turnoff because I'm like, I have a lot of things and now I don't have even basic closet space. So trust me, as a woman, I'm looking at closet space. So those are things, check out the living room, the kitchen. Where is it situated? I've seen floor plans before where you open the door and you're in the kitchen. Like as soon as you open the door, you're in it. There's no like it's to the side or whatever. You're literally, you walk in and you're in the middle of it. On this side, it's like the fridge and the stove and cabinets. And then over here is like the wall. So just make sure you really understand how big your unit is going to be and have a really good idea of what each individual section, how big it is. Always imagine that if you were the renter and your real estate agent showed you that particular unit, what would wow you about it? What would make you think, yes, I can see myself living here? Even the smallest units, if they are designed well, can be really spacious. So it's all about the floor plan and how the builder designs each suite to be as functional as possible. Another thing I want you to look at is what floor you're purchasing on. This is important for a number of reasons. So first of all, let's go back to the occupancy we're talking about. Now, remember, occupancy happens as soon as that unit is deemed safe and done, that you can occupy it, and then your occupancy fees kick in right away. Now, let's say you are buying in a building that has 20 floors. If you buy, let's say on the first or second floor, your occupancy time is going to be longer, say, than if you were buying on the 18th or 19th floor, right? Because a building gets completed from the bottom up. So that means if you're on the first floor, you're going to get your occupancy fairly sooner than everybody else. And depending on how long it takes them to complete that building, you're gonna be paying these like occupancy fees to the builder. And in some situations, not being able to rent it out could be 6 months, could be 9 months, who knows? However, if you're on the higher floor, so in the situation, there's 20 floors and let's say you bought on the 18th floor. Now you know that once you have occupancy, they're pretty much done the building. So they'll probably be done in a month or two. And so your occupancy time is going to be short. So that means probably in about a month or so, you'll be able to close on that condo, get that condo in your name, get your mortgage, and be able to do whatever you want with your unit. So that's really, really important. You want to think of resale value. And again, if you are renting out this unit, you want to look at what's going to make your unit more desirable. Now, in the real estate market, we all know there's certain things that make your unit more desirable. One of them is what floor you're on. So the higher the floor, the higher the rent you can charge. Also, check out where the view is. So the condo building is going to have 4 different directions, right, that you can purchase. So you want to figure out which way you're facing and what is the view. So, do you get a beautiful view where you can see the entire lake, view of the CN Tower, park, whatever? Or do you have a view where maybe you're above the parking garage? So make sure that when you're purchasing your condo that you're looking to see where exactly it's situated on the floor, what direction is it, and what will be the view from your condo. Now let's talk about the cooling period and why absolutely make sure you use a lawyer. So when it comes to condos, there is a rule here in Ontario that you're supposed to have 10-day cooling period. What does that mean? That means you have 10 days once you sign that contract to think about things. And worst case, if you decide you no longer want to buy that unit, you can actually end the agreement. Now, the thing is that depending on where you're watching this from, you might live in an area where there's no requirement for condo buildings to offer you this mandatory cooling period. And here in Ontario, if you're not buying a condo, let's say you're buying a freehold property, there's actually no requirement for the builder to offer you this cooling period. So what I've actually seen in some of these launches when you get the agreements is they actually say deals are firm, meaning that you cannot back out of it, you can't make any changes. So that is really important to look for. Technically, you don't need a lawyer to purchase pre-construction. Now remember, the paperwork that you sign is huge. It's like, I think, this thick. It's pages and pages of, legal mumble jumble that talks about all these things, all these scenarios. Are you gonna really read all of it? I mean, let's say yes, like I hope you do, but for most people it can be overwhelming to look through a contract that is, maybe in terminology that you're not used to. Maybe you don't fully understand what it's trying to say. This is where a lawyer comes in. A lawyer is probably going to cost you maybe $1,000, but it's well worth it, because this way, if you buy a condo and you've got that cooling period, you can purchase, go to the lawyer, have them review the paperwork, and if they find something in there that doesn't sit right with them, especially if there's something that you want to be able to do with that unit, like the right to assign or the right to lease during occupancy, if the lawyer comes to you and says like, hey, I just reviewed the paperwork and you actually don't have rights to do that in the paperwork, you can make the decision to say, is it worth for me to close on this condo? If it's not worth it for you, this is now your opportunity to go back to the builder and actually cancel the agreement, and you're legally allowed to. You're gonna need a lawyer anyways for when you close on that condo, so why not just find someone ahead of time that you want to work with and get them to review the paperwork when you purchase that condo. The last piece of advice I have for you as an investor is make sure you don't get caught up in this whole real estate frenzy. I mean, I feel like every day when you turn on the television, they're either telling you that the market's gonna crash, or they're telling you about, some project that ended up making like $200,000 in under a year, and you're thinking, oh gosh, I was an idiot for not investing in that project. At the end of the day, while I think real estate is a fantastic market to invest in, nothing is guaranteed. You can't just think of it as a quick buck, because it's a lot of money on the line. The best advice I ever got was you should buy real estate and wait versus wait to buy real estate. I don't want you to get sucked into this notion that you can just buy a bunch of investments and flip them in a short amount of time. Think of the downtown market. I remember, for 10 years or so, everyone has always been talking about the downtown market as one of the places to invest in, right? This is where rents were going up every year, the values were going up. I remember that there was a time where real estate agents would pursue me. They would actually leave me notes on my door, or they would put notes in my mailbox saying like, hey, are you remotely interested in selling your unit? Because I have a customer who is already ready to go, who has, the cash on hand that is willing to pay you X amount of dollars for your exact unit. Those times have changed now. The pandemic hit, and no one could have predicted that so many people would lose their jobs or end up having to work from home. So now this whole downtown lifestyle where people didn't mind paying top dollar to be downtown to avoid the commute, now all those people were stuck in their 600 square foot condos. And if they lost their job, they were definitely not going to renew their leases. They left, maybe moved in with their parents, or maybe they moved to a different city where the rent was cheaper. And some of the people that were working from home, they were used to never being home. So, that 600 square foot condo felt okay because, they woke up, they went to their office, spent 8-9 hours there, went on afterwards, after work, and came home to sleep. Now all of a sudden they spent all day in that condo, and they quickly realized that they didn't have the space for it. So you saw a bunch of people leaving downtown to buy a bigger home, because we knew back when the pandemic started that you could buy a detached brand new home in a place like Paris, Ontario for either the same price or much cheaper, equivalent of a downtown condo. So if you were working from home and you did need to be downtown, would you pay $500,000 for a 500 square foot condo downtown, or would you use that money to buy a 2,500 square foot brand new detached home, a big backyard? No one could have predicted that. So that's my main point: is don't just kind of follow the frenzy and go, oh, I can never lose money in real estate. I'm just going to overextend myself. If you've got tons of extra money and you can handle it, for sure. But I think as the average person who's looking to start making some investments, you need to make sure that you are investing your money in something that if you get stuck with it, if let's say your plan to sell it or your plan to rent it out doesn't work out, that you're comfortable carrying it. Now, that's actually something we saw too during the pandemic. There were people who lost their jobs that no longer could pay their rent. What do you think happened to those investors? They still have a mortgage that they have to pay. So that's the key. You can never predict the future. You really can never really accurately predict the real estate market. The best thing you can do is invest in projects that make sense to you, that are at a price that you're comfortable with, and that you know that you're okay carrying that condo for many, many years. So regardless of what happens, regardless if the prices go up or down, you're gonna be okay. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope it was informative. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, these are all mistakes that I have personally made, but the good thing is that they're all avoidable. So by watching this video and by writing down all the mistakes that I made, I really hope when you go purchase your next investment property, look out for these things and make sure to avoid making the same mistakes as me. Happy investing, and before you end this video, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. I post a lot of exclusive content, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I will see you in my next video.